Hello again everyone, and in today's video we're going to be covering a new Steam Deck VR game that I've found, and that game is called Metro Awakening. Now before I do go into this, I am aware that this game is available on Meta Quest VR headsets as standalone, but for peasants like me who own an Oculus One VR headset, this game is not really available for me in any other way but Steam Deck VR. I'm also a big fan of the Metro games, and very recently had the chance to play through the entire thing, starting from Metro 2033 all the way to Metro Exodus. I think the Metro series offers a very unique perspective into the apocalypse, and I wasn't even sure that I had a VR game. It was only recently that I picked it up and I seen it, and I thought, I wonder if we could get this working for Steam Deck VR, and then I decided to make a purchase. So for those who are uninitiated, what is Metro Awakening? Metro Awakening is a story-driven VR adventure game set a few years before the mainline titles, and is a spin-off of the games that come before it. We follow the story of Sergei Iskandarov, who must venture into the Moscow Metro on a mission to find his wife. I am really wary about spoilers, so I'm not going to talk about much of the story here, and any gameplay that I show will be from quite early on in the game. If you've played any of the earlier Metro titles, then you kind of know what to expect here. These games are extremely atmospheric and do lean quite heavily into the psychological horror aspects of the apocalypse, and this game is no different. There are a lot of pulse pounding moments in this game, which you'll be seeing in the gameplay that I'll show just a bit later on, and if you're a fan of VR horror, you will definitely enjoy this one. But for now, enough about that. How does this game perform on the Steam Deck? Well, when I picked this game up, it was a bit of a gamble for me because I really wasn't sure if it would. I didn't actually think I'd be able to get some good performance out of this, but the idea behind giving this game a try was that it was ported to Meta VR headsets, so optimization probably would have been really important during the development phase for this game, and I am glad to report I was not wrong in this assumption. The performance for this game is absolutely fantastic, especially on a Steam Deck. As you can see from the video, I am able to run this game with TAA enabled, my post-processing set to high, along with the particles and the textures. The one thing that I did slightly lower though was the resolution scale, and legacy reprojection was enabled. I did also set my locomotion options to custom, as the other profiles did give me a slight filter when I was rotating and moving around, which I really didn't like. But the great thing about this game is that we can change most of these options and really customize it to our preference. I also kept on quick turn, which is if you press the analog stick on one of your motion controllers, you can flick yourself around 180. Not something I usually do, but I thought it might be a bit handy if I'm walking around the metro tunnels. In the gameplay tab, there is also a few more options. We can enable an arachnophobia mode, which is if you've got a fear of spiders, then it can turn that off because you do get spiders crawling on you. You can also turn off the screen shakes if that makes you feel a bit motion sick. But enough about all that, let's move on and look at some gameplay. So just before I purchased the game, I did go on YouTube and Reddit and a few other websites and read a few reviews for this one, and I heard a lot of people describe this game as a bit of a walking simulator, which I'm not really sure that I agree with that assessment. I think most VR games can be called walking simulators in some way. Since this game was not developed by 4A, it was developed by Vertigo Games, I think they've done a great job at capturing the Metro spirit and reincorporating that style of Metro gameplay loop into a VR type game. So as you can see from the footage here, I've got to plug in a charger into a wall outlet, which is similar to what we do in the games. The only difference is we just press a button, but here it is fully interactive, and reviewers did complain that there's too many of those puzzles, but in my opinion it's a bit of a moot point because you are playing in VR. It would probably ruin the VR experience if it was just a button press anyway, because VR is all about that interactivity that we have in the environment itself. And also, since the game is building up that tension at all times, those interactions do have a layer of dread behind them. So if you need to activate a button, you might be getting attacked by an enemy, and it brought me back to the feeling of when I first played Metro 2033 on the hardest difficulty. There were moments when you'd be plunged into absolute darkness because you'd need to pump your flashlight, and just that stopping and pumping motion while you're surrounded by what could be enemies is really tense, and I think they've brought that over to this game really well. I also heard complaints about the visuals of this game. They could have been referring to the Meta Quest VR version, but for the Steam VR version I thought it looked fantastic. Obviously not on par with Metro Exodus, but probably on par with Last Light and 2033 in terms of texture quality. Even running this on the Steam Deck and my lower resolution Oculus One headset, there was still quite a lot of detail in the image, and I can imagine if your headset's a bit of a higher resolution, it'll probably look even better than it did for me. And overall, I do think it's a fantastic addition to the Metro franchise. I've recently found myself very disenfranchised with the direction Bethesda have taken Fallout, so this feels like a really good replacement for that post-apocalyptic vibe. But that's enough talking, let's roll through some gameplay and I'll jump back in at the end.
Of magazines. A man who wanders into the lion's den should not be surprised to find lions.
The entrance to the archives is a couple levels above you, on the opposite side of the escalators.
I remember waiting for Yana at the top of those escalators. We agreed to meet here at noon. I'm there waiting, watching face after face rise in front of me over the top of the escalator. I waited 3 hours, and at 3:06, I get a tap on my shoulder. And there's Yana, behind me, with her arm in a sling.
So in other words, neither of you knew how to take a hint.
She called us stubborn.
And with that, we've reached the end of our video on Metro Awakening for Steam Deck VR. In closing, I would highly recommend this title. I've been having an absolute blast with this title. Some people have even put it on par with Half-Life Alyx, but I'm not really sure about that, as Half-Life Alyx is kind of the holy grail of VR. It is really difficult to match the quality of Half-Life Alyx, but I do feel the game comes pretty close. Before I end the video, however, there is one quick issue that I just want to mention that I had with this game. It does work completely out of the box. All you have to do is install and play it, but when I booted into the game for the first time, it was really dark, to the point where when you're in the tutorial room, I couldn't actually see much around me. But I wasn't really sure if this was an issue, or the Metro titles are designed to be played in very dark environments, and that darkness is part of the overall vibe. I am not sure whether it was something that was intended, or it was just an issue with the fact that the Quest 1 has an OLED display, though PSVR users did not report that same issue. I did fix it, however, by just adding a few lines to the game's settings file, and all this did was just hide the game's gamma beyond the options menu's limitation. I will leave those commands in the description down below. It may not be an issue for you, however, so I just thought I'd include it just as a bit of a side note. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content that I'm doing, feel free to subscribe to the channel, and if you like this video and many of the others that I'm doing, feel free to leave a like on it. It helps boost it in the algorithm. Remember to stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.
Collaborations. How about, if you don't catch up with that caravan soon, it's time to just come back, eh?
I can't. Not until I find Yana's medicine.